This is a Power 98.7 podcast. Now we're talking. Subscribe to Power 98.7 podcasts in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. There's more on power987.co.za.
Welcome back to the show. We're still in the second hour of the Power Zone, just inching to the top of two. And that was a conversation that we had with Lawrence Manaka coming through as a young person from Rise Mzansi. And I have at life_ here on Twitter saying, as an unemployed young person, every morning reminds me of how bad life is. So having to stay at home till the sun goes down, having to clean every day of my life, you can't even refuse because you're the only one around during the day. So everything is on you. The pots, seeing your peers just moving forward in life. I'm so tired of all of these. So this also draws back from how then young people are finding themselves in the receiving end in terms of where we find ourselves right now. But do check them out. Policy at risemzansi.org. Also on Rise Mzansi on all of those social media platforms. We're going into parenting now. I'll be roping in Daddy Zibuse Kunene, who'll just help us make sense of this particular space. Hey, there's no method, there's no strategy that one can say that is a winning formula of some sort where parenting is concerned. So parenting skills are not instinctive, we are told, but they are learned behaviors over time, right? So between now and 2:30, we'll just bring parenting under the spotlight with Daddy Zibuse Kunene. He's an author and the chairperson of organization Dads in the Picture. So this morning we'll take a look at children's behavioral issues over time. We'll look at our parenting role, but also what we are faced with over time. We'll look at where these parenting or these behavioral patterns stem from, their root causes, where young people are concerned. We'll explore their behavioral patterns or behaviors here from kindergarten to primary, high school, all the way to tertiary or university, as we try to find solutions here and help each other parent better. Daddy Zibuse, good morning, sir. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you very much for giving us your time.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure. There are some people as well who have been tuned in, waiting. They've been wondering, what's going on? Like, be patient, guys. It's coming.
I totally honestly apologize for that, but you know how it goes, man. Let's push it to 2:30 and look into parenting, go into this space, and I thought we can move things around because then we had a vibrant young person there where young people were just wanting to speak about politics and where we find ourselves as a country going forward. So I want us to move then from politics to parenting this morning and talk about these patterns that we are faced with over time. Also just invite the listeners at home, parents, everyone that is listening right now to rally behind this conversation. We are on hashtag Power Zone on Twitter. I am at Katlego Lerodi _ You're welcome to also rally behind the work that Daddy Zibuse Kunene has been doing over time on the socials. And also remember, we are on at Power FM 987, that being our official handle there by X. So Daddy, there's no formula, like I was saying here. It's really a tricky position that you find yourself in. One gets so nervous, at the same time excited when the little one is still, there's still a bun in the oven and you really don't know what lies ahead where your life is concerned. They come through often with so much joy and at times then reality kicks in where as a parent you are faced with a mammoth of challenges where you have to navigate your parenthood over time. So these learned behaviors, what is your understanding of these learned behaviors and how does one then navigate this particular space?
Yeah, thank you for that question and the topic. It's a very broad one, but an interesting one at that, because whatever it is that we do for, with, and to children, it forms the foundation of who they become for the rest of their lives. And the experts have told us that for the first 7 years of a child's life, that's when we have the most opportunity to shape who they become, to instill values and principles. And if we miss those first 7 years, then the other years become a challenge. And we've seen how most parents want to then shape a child's behavior and a child's values and principles when they are a teenager. At that point, it's very, very late. And so the learned behaviors that children usually display are the behaviors that they would have learned at home. And unfortunately, no one actually is born with a manual. So when we come out of our mother's wombs, we don't come out holding a manual to the parents saying, hey, this is how you will be, this is how you will raise me. And therefore, it's a constant challenge for parents to raise children perfectly. I'm not saying raising perfect children, but raising children perfectly. There is a way to raise children perfectly, and that way is for both parents to be present. And when both parents are present, they also need to understand their roles in shaping that child, in shaping the mindset, in shaping who the child becomes in the future. There's a quote that I love by Khalil Gibran in the book The Prophet, where he says, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life longing for itself. Right? So that means life needs children. Life requires these children to be born. And we, therefore, have been given the responsibility to unleash them into the world as the right kind of people that life requires from us. It becomes a challenge when we are then consequential parents, because then we don't know what to do. We're not emotionally, mentally ready for these children who are coming in.
So when you look at it, then one would say that, like you say, you need to be present from the get-go where young people are concerned, meaning that you need to also be intentional about how you position and you shape them. Other people would say that, you teach them certain values and they pick up those values and they grow with them as they go. And these are rooted values that won't see them getting lost when they go to school and the likes, and they're meeting other people with different values and different behavioral patterns in this regard. So would you say that, let's say, for instance, things like here at home, no one is left behind. Every Sunday we go to church, things like that, where you start some sort of a norm that would help you, parent better, or that would help you really position and teach them all of these responsibilities in this regard, being intentional as a parent. Can that help you actually avoid a lot of things where this parenting space is concerned?
That can go a very, very long way in being intentional as a parent. So everything that you do with your child, you do it with an intention. As children, we often don't like to be told what to do, especially when things are difficult. Children will test the limits. Children will test the boundaries for parents. And when parents capitulate to what children are doing, then the children themselves are gone. But when we learn that children will always test the boundaries, and we then become resolute in being disciplined parents, and instilling discipline in our children from a very early age, they later in life come back and say, you know what, my parents were tough on me. My parents were strict on me. I now understand and I appreciate what they did for me. I'm sure in your life that you would have also met children who, or maybe grown-ups, who are blaming their parents for not teaching them discipline because now they are lacking in certain things. And remember that children are born into this world because they are needed. There is a purpose for them. And because there's a purpose for them, it is already in them. And so throughout our lives, we are working towards working out that purpose within us, discovering what is this thing inside of us that keeps driving us. And if we don't know how to manifest that which is within us, that which has been given to us, so that we can then fulfill our place in society, then we become frustrated, then we become angry, then we get into things like depression, because there is this fight within ourselves that I want to do something, but I don't know how to do something. But when I try to do this thing, I do not have the discipline or the willingness to follow through with it, because those tools I was not given as a child. And therefore, we find other people now needing to go to therapy, needing coaching, needing mentoring, so that they allow themselves to learn those skills, so that they are able to tap into the gifts that have been given them. As my other hat that I wear is, I'm a life coach, a transformational coach. And what I always tell my clients when I engage with them the first time is like, listen, I'm not going to give you something that comes outside of you. Everything that we're going to do in our sessions are things that come from within you. So I always harness that which is within them and show them what has always been inside of them. So even with children, the Bible tells us that we must train up a child in the way that they should go, so that when they are older, they will not depart from it. And if we as parents fail to do that, then we've failed dismally in our responsibilities. Some of us as parents, we try to be friends to our children when it's still too early. And when we do that, we miss the opportunity to lay a proper foundation.
Do we also find ourselves then as parents caught up in that position where we really just want our young ones to remain or stay young, to stay as babies? We don't acknowledge where then they find themselves in different stages of life, where then I'm still treating you as a nunu, as a nana, when clearly you are moving on and you're developing. That can tend to really make me miss certain elements where this young one is concerned, or even really be under the impression that they're a kid forever, not acknowledging the fact that now, for instance, they're going on to their periods. For instance, they're starting to date or the likes. For instance, they're finding their voice in terms of who they want to be, how they want to dress, how they want to be addressed, and the likes. So as parents, how do we navigate that particular space?
Yeah, it's two ways. If you can think about it yourself, in your parents' eyes, you are still their child. No matter how much you can advance in life, you will always be a child to them. However, even with that, even with our own children, we refuse to acknowledge that they've grown so much. However, but when we now look at raising them to become people who think independently, people who are able to operate in life without being too dependent on us, that's where we then tend to miss things, as you've alluded. That if we always want to baby our children and want to always come to their rescue when they struggle, the slightest struggle, we want to come in and assist. We want to come in and help them. And by doing that, we are doing more harm than good, because we need to allow children to struggle and learn how to find their way through things, how to find solutions through life. And what I've come to realize now with children growing up in this generation is that if you give them that space, they show you what they are ready for. If you look at how children are raised now with, for example, the devices and the access to internet, if you teach them and you put the basics, the fundamentals, and you teach them the principles that this is what you are going to do, and this is why you're going to do it, and these are the consequences when you don't do what you're supposed to do. They tend to respond to that, and they grow and mature according to their age. Others also advance slightly ahead of their ages. I often look at my son and the things and the tasks that he's willing to take on. And whenever he wants to do that, I don't say, no, not now. What I simply do is I guide him in what he wants to do. Therefore, I'm allowing him the space to explore and learn, but in a guided space. So when he then grows up and is able to discern certain things and observe what is good, what is bad, what can hurt him, I'm still there in the background and coaching and guiding. As he grows older, they will get to a point where when he comes and asks me something, I will want to know how he got to that point. What was his thought process? And I will have to interrogate the thought process. Did he really think this thing through before getting to that point? And that's what we need to teach our children. Think when you do one, it leads to two. When you do two, it leads to three. And you know that if you do this, these are the results and these are the consequences. What we often don't do as parents is we don't interrogate what children are thinking and why they think the way they do. And when we don't do that to them, they will do that to us. No, but why don't you want me to go there? Why don't you want me to do this? And they will tend to question our authority. And when our authority is questioned, because some of us as parents, we are not emotionally developed, and our emotional IQ is low, we then tend to feel intimidated that this child is questioning my authority. But when we are emotionally mature, we're able to handle certain things, certain situations differently. And that's what we keep advocating for. As dads in the picture, that children need to be given the space to be heard, to be seen, and to be engaged with.
Like the way you're saying, you're talking about the child questioning your authority, and here I'm seeing Livu as well saying that sometimes it's even harder to find parents having to apologize to their young ones for having wronged them. So this particular space, why is it that we find it hard? Is it our ego? Is it maybe probably we don't want to be challenged as parents? It's something that's foreign for us to apologize because we're not apologized to by our own parents in the past, a trait that we learned as we were going along. Well, why is it hard for parents to say, "Skis, I'm sorry," to apologize in a way that, we will see the child picking up the pieces and knowing that this is a safe space?
Yeah, that is a sore point for so many parents, thinking that they've never had an apology from their parents. And they believe that if I were to apologize to a child, and they look at a child in a condescending manner, that this little person now wants me to apologize, I'm not going to do that. And then it becomes an issue of pride. But what they don't realize by doing that is that they are teaching a child never to apologize, especially when you are the one who's got the moral high ground, or who is seemingly older, or who seems like they know more than the other one. It becomes a problem when that person is now a grown-up individual, and now they now need to apologize, So apologizing to our children when we are wrong. And our children these days will call us out. Says, "No, mommy or daddy, but that's not what you said. That's not, you hurt me that way. You did this." They are able to articulate for themselves that they are either offended or they're hurt. And when we do not acknowledge, "I'm sorry you are hurt. I'm sorry I caused you to, I caused you pain." We are then saying, "I don't see you. I don't hear you. Yes, you're a child. You are here. But when it comes to your emotions, when it comes to your experiences, I don't acknowledge them. And that's what we are raising. And that's where we find children who then go out into society and become toxic individuals, who become narcissists, because it all started in the home. It all started with the family. When we then go and gaslight children, no, but what do you mean I was wrong? No, but I did not do that. No, you saw it this way. We gaslight them. They go out there and they gaslight others. And when they go and gaslight others, they then become toxic. And then we start seeing all these toxic behaviors. We start seeing things where we are now expecting external institutions outside of the home to legislate and advise and teach where we in the home have failed to do. So our work in fixing our society, in fixing the social ills, starts in the home. Yeah. The problem of drugs, the problem of gender-based violence, we can fix it first in the home. Because I cannot say to my child, do whatever you want, and when they start having public sex at a very early age, and then I go and I blame the school, and then I expect government. Government will legislate where the parents have failed. The school will fail where the parents and where the home is failing. But the government and the schools are there to enforce and enhance what the home has taught to the children. So when we see how children are behaving today, let us not blame society. Let us not blame government. Let us not blame the schools. Let's go back home. How is the environment at home? How has this child been raised?
We've seen COVID-19 present a dynamic here where then a lot of parents opted for homeschooling and the likes, and it just crossed my mind, and I wanted to check if something that maybe you've come across in your line of work as well, where then you'd often hear a parent saying that my worst mistake was to let them out, let them go to school, because then we see this particular school reversing the gains that we've had or we've amassed over time as parents here. Now, this person, this young person, when they come back, we have to start from scratch. They are rude, they are unruly, they are swearing now. All of a sudden, we don't understand where they've gotten this behavior of swearing here. You start picking up all of these unsavory things in your young one, and you can attribute it to them being outside because you've done all of those checks as a parent, as both parents, to ensure that you raise them in a responsible manner. Have you come across such a case? And how does one then navigate this particular process or this particular space that they find themselves in? Do I move them to another school? Do I opt for homeschooling? How do I deal with that?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's a very important one, and we cannot even emphasize how important that is, because what we always advocate for is that let us raise children perfectly, right? And if you as a parent are not raising your child perfectly, and I then say I'm only going to focus on my child, I'm going to raise my child, whether the next door neighbor child is wayward, they have a father, they don't have a father, they don't have parents, they don't have values, that's none of my business. But then what I forget is that I can raise my child perfectly, and then that next door neighbor child is not raised, is not given the values, is not taught the right way of behaving and of conducting themselves. They will learn from the streets. They will learn from wherever they learn. And when that child engages with my child, they will influence my child in those wayward behaviors. And then I'm now wondering what's going on. And I feel sad for all these parents who are doing their best to cultivate children who are upstanding people. And then they get then to be influenced by others, where they're now talking things that they were never taught at home. It's because we focus too much on our own nucleus family that we've ignored the child down the street who does not have parents, or who does not have a father, or who does not have a mother. We have forgotten that a child is raised by a village. As much as we may want to deny that, it is a reality. It is the truth. Because if I was to take as many children as possible in my neighborhood and say to them, come, I'm going to teach you certain things. You need to learn responsibility. You need to learn what this is like. As much as it may be tough, but the fact that they are learning and they get to see what responsibility looks like, I've planted a seed. And they will respect me as a parent, but most of all, they would have gained something. And when they go out there, they will not seek to influence other children negatively. And that's where you would then see children who come from home where a father is not there, but they have had a father from another household looking after them. There's something that I've seen with girl children. Girl children, when there is no father around them, right, they are afraid of taking risks. Because I'm sure now you've seen it in your life that when you play with children, you tend to play a bit on the rough side. You tend to hold them and throw them up in the air. And they either get scared or get excited, but you always comfort them. So as fathers, there are things there are roles that we play in our children's lives where we get to push them out of their comfort zone, where we get to encourage them to take more risks, where we encourage them to go on the bold side, on the rough side of life, but we are there for them and we keep nurturing, and we do the same for boys. But when that is not done for girl children, they tend to be too cautious, too afraid, because dad was not there to push that in them, because mommy was always protective, mommy was always cushioning. And we can't blame mothers for that. That is how mothers parent, and that is how fathers parent. They bring out that riskiness out of children, but in a cautious environment, so that it's a character that is built within them, and they get to grow up with it, and they become these confident, proactive, and strong people in the engagements that they do. So the parents who then come back and homeschool, they will still do right by homeschooling. And unfortunately, not all parents can afford to homeschool because they still have to work. They still have to do certain things. They still have to, earn a living. So unfortunately, they are stuck in needing to find the right school. And when you find the right school, it costs you. It means that you have to pay more. And in paying more, it means that you have to go and earn more. And when you earn more, you're away from the home. So it's that catch-22 situation. And unfortunately, we need to strike a balance. And that's why you cannot only focus on parenting your own child anymore. Parent other children where you don't see a father present. Bring them into your space and nurture them as a father. Or if you're a mother, be that parent who also plays that role to other children. And every child must be your child, because every child needs a dad.
Yeah, getting back to basics, right? That whole it takes a village to raise a child, then we see it being very important here. But you also touched on various aspects that I wanted to touch on. One being, is it easier when you are raising a girl child than when you're raising a boy child? You made that example here. I just wanted to pick up on the whole patterns to say that if we are parents and then we find that bundle of joy is a boy, we we must just brace ourselves to really maybe probably do things in a particular way compared to when we realize that no, it's a girl child. Do we then breathe easy a bit to say really when you look at it, this is where we find ourselves? And also, how does one then navigate through a child that is finding themselves, a child that maybe probably you see them from a young age that this child is a member of the LGBTQI community. They're not warming up to trucks that you're buying them. They're warming up to dolls, even though they are boys, or they're not really, those girls that would want to wear skirts and the likes. They want you to buy them shorts and they want to play soccer. How do you navigate all of that as a parent? Is it an add-on or probably doesn't matter which gender you find your child to be as you go about this parenting role?
Yeah, I would say, that's a very good, that's actually a good question. And what I would say is there are things that we as parents need to instill in a child. And then there are things that we need to observe from the child. The child will guide us and they will show who they are. And what we then need to do is play the coach role. And when we play the coach role, we then guide them. Where we don't understand what is going on, that's where we seek professional advice, because it doesn't help to just seek advice anyway. We need to seek professional advice from the relevant spaces as to how do I navigate an unfamiliar territory. I once met I think there was a person who was saying that they were intersex, and unfortunately their father couldn't relate to them. And because their father couldn't relate to them, then the father decided to be absent because this was overwhelming for him. But now the child missed out on a relationship with the father because the father didn't know how to handle that. So it's important that we seek professional advice where we find ourselves overwhelmed so that we get to understand who our children are becoming and how we can play a pivotal role in ensuring that we don't destroy the child themselves, right? And this is including the LGBTQI plus community and anything else in between and everywhere else. We need to admit as parents when we fall short that I actually don't know how to do this. I've raised this first one. This one was easy. This one was fine. But this one I don't understand. And instead of rejecting them, seek guidance on how to raise this one. Even though you may have 10 children, there will always be a child who challenges you in terms of how to raise them. It's not for us as parents to shy away from them, but it is for us to seek advice, to seek counsel, so that we are better able to parent them. And spaces like that's in the picture help parents, especially dads, become present and positive dads in spite of the challenges that they face around parenting. You see, so that's the role that we as parents would need to play in those situations, irrespective of what your child is showing you. We just need to read our children and then say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. How do I help this child become the best of who they need to be?
That is very important. And you've just touched on something that is very pivotal as well, to say, as parents, you can't do it alone, right? You need like-minded people. You need to consult as much as you can, because then you are confronted with a young one that is going through all of these stages of lives, and to a point whereby peer pressure also starts creeping in, to a point whereby they too become curious about certain certain things and you see them now wanting to experiment. The next thing you hear, your child is smoking cigarette. The next thing, they are involved in drugs, and it tends to affect their growth and development as it goes. How do you actually really deal with this? It's every parent's worst nightmare, where then you'll find your child having mixed up with the wrong crowds, or your child experimenting on wrong things, getting addicted, and now you are starting all over again to want to discipline and try by all means to show them the light. Something that you said it needs to start when they're very young, in terms of instilling all of those values. Substance abuse, them being curious, pornography, them finding themselves involved in wrong things. How do you then deal with that part of their life? And I think that is when they have gone into their teenagehood of some sort, and they're starting to experience adolescence, and that is when their hormones are raging as well. They want to experiment. They have boyfriends and girlfriends. They're finding their expressions. That must be the most tricky for each and every parent.
Yeah, it is. It's the trickiest and the saddest part, when you have raised your child perfectly, and then they were influenced by circumstances outside of the home. And when you were asking this one, I think, phrase came up, that when you have a hammer, then every problem is a nail that you just need to, hit on. But sometimes, as parents, we need to have a spiritual aspect. We need to have our spiritual life developed, because that will help us. Some battles, not every battle, but some battles require us to fight them on a spiritual level and identify the spiritual forces that are at play, and then tackle them accordingly. When you're a praying parent, when your child starts showing symptoms of, going astray, then you need to get on your knees and pray and seek counsel on how to handle the situation. You fighting them will not change the situation. It will only make them rebel against you. And in rebelling against you, they don't want to be in your presence. And when they don't want to be in your presence, they don't want to be in the home. They'd rather be in the streets. And as we know, when you tell a child, don't do this, they become curious, and they'll go and explore and do it even more. So, firstly, you take that battle on a spiritual level, and then you need the wisdom to handle that situation. And when you can find yourself handling the situation with wisdom rather than with your own knowledge, then you are on a way as a parent to winning that battle, because then you'll be able to guide. And I've come to see and realize that love does cover a multitude of sin. And when we are able to apply love and bring our children closer to home through wisdom and love, when a child is in the home, even when they're influenced outside, we still have that inclination to work with them, to help them navigate the situation they find themselves in. Because not every child who goes into exploration with drugs is actually rebelling. It was simply peer pressure. And how have we then equipped our children to deal with peer pressure? It all goes back into laying the right foundation in them. Because, when you always saying to a child, don't, all they've ever heard is don't and no. But when you teach and you coach as a parent, you say, but why do you want to do that? This is not the right time. This is how you can. Don't you think this is how you can handle it differently? So you always open the way for them to think And also, we really need to be present as parents, as difficult as it may be today, but we really need to be present, Daddy. We need to make sure that we are instilling the right values. There are things that we can never stop. Children will explore. We know that we also explored. We know that we too also went into a phase where we were rebellious against our parents. And so because we know that, how do we then work with our children when they get to those stages, when they find themselves addicted to drugs or pornography or all these social ills? How do we work with them to restore them and help them through that phase is very important. It's not an easy thing. It's actually much more difficult now for us with access to unkept data, to access to internet wherever we go, because then that means our children are also exposed to things that we may not always be able to control, even though there are things and ways to restrict access. But it's better to teach our children what to do and what not to do, and show them the consequences and show them the benefits of standing up to peer pressure and saying you'd rather stand alone than succumb to peer pressure, because then that defines you as an individual. When that child has grown up, they will always know that I'd rather stand alone rather than go with the crowd, because sometimes the crowd does not go the right direction.
That is true. And also just to remember that you're not alone, right? As you try and navigate this, space that we find ourselves in, and just take it easy on yourself as a parent. You've tried your best. Just try to be there for the young one as much as you can. Be supportive, be present, be intentional about how you want their dreams to also manifest, and how things you would want them to go out. Go on your knees, pray as much as you can, because sometimes some of these things are spiritual, right? We can't even see them, but they're spiritual, and then you get confused as to Katlaho has always been a disciplined child, but then now all of a sudden, what the hell, you know what I mean? Things are just going south. But I would want us to, before we let you go, Daddy, just give us information in terms of how people can reach out to you, those that parents, they've been listening to us and they would like more. I'd like to find out from Dads in the Picture in terms of how you guys are faring there and how they can benefit from this, and how then they can also tap into your book as you're an author now. And we'll see how then we push it from there. How do we get hold of you?
All right. So for Dads in the Picture, it's simple. The best place to go is the website, dadsinthepicture.co.za, and then you will find all the contact details there. We are also on the social platforms, so you can find us there. And concerning my book, it's available. There's a Kindle version that's available on Amazon. I'm just working on getting the hard copy as well on Amazon as well, so that should be available soon. Alternatively, you can email me at zibuse@morningthoughts.co.za, and then we can take it from there. Otherwise, I'm also on the socials as Zibuse Kunene. And I strongly believe in that we must never stop trying to impact people positively. And if we can change one person's life just today, then we've done a lot for today. And if through this conversation we have helped one person, one parent, find at least hope, then we have done the best that we could for today. Because as thy days, so shall thy strength be. So thank you, Daddy, for this platform. Thank you to Libu. Thank you to Power. Thank you to each and every person who constantly engages with the material that we put out, because we want to impact people positively. We want to give people hope that in a day and time when there seems to be no hope, there's still a glimmer of hope. I always say, when you feel like giving up now, just wait for the next moment that is coming. Wait for the next minute, wait for the next hour, but something will come. It may take a while, but it will come. So let's engage.
Yeah, Daddy, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you. We appreciate the work that you're doing. We'll follow your book. We'll follow the work that you continue doing. Continue touching lives. And please don't be shy when we invite you. You really are the best. And we wish you everything of the best in the month of October, in the day that is to come.
You've been listening to a Power 98.7 podcast. For more podcasts, visit power987.co.za or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.